It's officially the first day of fall, but it's hotter than hell outside with everything that's going on in the world of sports. Welcome to episode 84 of the Wise Guys here on our YouTube channel and my Twitch page. And Michael, can we? It's almost like we have to kind of take a forced week off, but then that actually means we got to do double the work when we come back with everything that's going on right now.
It's clinical fucking insanity right now. Between the Major League Baseball playoff races, you have college football getting good with the opening of conference play really this week, with a bunch of meaningful games. You have NHL camps opening. The NFL, of course, is going full steam ahead with stupidity, left, right, and center. I mean, it's been an interesting, especially this week, Jim. I mean, we talked on Thursday, and I said to you, dude, we need to talk because the show's writing itself. I mean, how often do I say that?
And I mean, it's kind of a good thing that things slowed down a little bit because, uh, we would have, it would have been, it wouldn't have been a hat trick. It would have basically been a top 10 list
I have to say,
from the home office in Butt, Montana.
It's Butte, not Butt, Montana.
Rent a car.
You got shit wrong with you. But yeah, no, lots to get to tonight. Obviously, it's going crazy, man. This is probably the most fun I've had in a September in a long time. So why don't we jump right to it? Let's get right to the hat trick tonight, sir. How about that?
Absolutely.
It's the three biggest topics in the world of sports from the last week. Get ready for the Wise Guys hat trick.
That was well done.
As my volume on the soundboard was not up, so let's try that again.
Do it again. Live television. All right, and leading off, we have college football week number 4. Lots of big games today. The Big Ten opener for the defending champions with USC entering the Big House. Is that for the first time ever? I mean, I can't remember in the 30 years I've been watching college football, they remember playing there.
I do see. I remember Washington, Notre Dame comes in. I remember Colorado. I mean, everyone remembers that. I don't ever remember USC.
I don't either. I remember USC at the Horseshoe. I don't remember USC at the Big House. Well, either way. So we had USC in Michigan today from the Big House. I almost gave you shit with that conversation with your father and I about Mizzou playing Vandy. There were a bunch of blowouts, and maybe the biggest one, let's start with that last one, the no defense at Chapel Hill. James Madison took the Tar Heels to the fucking woodshed.
53-21 Dukes at the half, and they had already rolled up 350 yards of offense. The Dukes finished with 611 yards of total offense. North Carolina, in an absolute embarrassing performance, still laid 616 yards themselves, but actually gave up 5 turnovers in that game.
Oh, that would be why you get blown out like that.
I watched part of that game, not exactly illegally, but basically by the midway point of the third quarter, it was still a 4-score game, and the entire student section and Chapel Hill was gone. James Madison had taken over, and it was to the point where you could just tell it were season ticket holders who didn't want to leave just yet, were enjoying the sunshine, and it was friends and family at that point.
Yeah, no, it's when you see a game like that, and I just saw the final score. I didn't see, and actually ESPN on the app has a thing, and today in North Carolina, and I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Here's something I found out too. Speaking of ESPN, do you know you can't do the game cast for games broadcast on Fox on ESPN, where you watch the animation?
Right.
Yeah, I was shocked because you could do it until this year. Because remember, ESPN has no rights to the Big Ten anymore. and Bucks are playing Marshall. They get their first win in the Sun Belt. And I was trying to watch that because Bobby had the TV and Paul Keel's in one ear and him doing stuff was not working. So I was trying to see that and you couldn't see it. Not till after the game, which I found very peculiar. But anyways, so yeah, blowout down at Chapel Hill, basically a basketball score.
Jacoby Criswell, North Carolina's quarterback, 28 of 48 for 475 yards, 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Alonzo Barrett III for James Madison, 22 of 34, 388 yards, 5 touchdowns, no picks.
Jesus.
And also ran 13 times for 99 yards and had 2 more touchdowns. So he accounted for 7 James Madison touchdowns in some capacity.
Good Lord.
For a James Madison team, listen, this was a North Carolina team that was 3-0 coming in. James Madison was 2-0 and now goes to 3-0. And with Northern Illinois barely clipping by, Buffalo, struggling for most of the first half in that game. I could definitely see, Northern Illinois maybe moving up a couple of spots, but James Madison being another group of 5 team that enters the top 25 when the polls come out tomorrow afternoon.
Yeah, with a win like that, especially on the road in Chapel Hill against a North Carolina team that people were thinking was going to be one of the ones giving Miami and or Clemson and or Florida State, for that matter, in the preseason, a push for the ACC championship, that's saying something. And we've seen some statement wins already this year. That was maybe one of the bigger statement wins. I mean, NIU's win against Notre Dame was a statement, in my opinion. What Texas did to Michigan last week was a statement win, in my opinion.
I think Boston College over Florida State, even though that looks worse and worse, it's still a team that got left out of the playoff and sent 9 players to the NFL draft last year.
No, I agree with you 100%. That was a statement win too. But I will say this. The halftime show for the Iowa Minnesota game is on right now, and I saw a stat. They were talking to Sharon Moore after we're going to talk about the champs win at the buzzer now real quick. Michigan beats USC 27-24 on a last-second rushing touchdown. Hey, Jim, do you know how many passing yards did the Michigan offense had today?
It wasn't much.
Well, I'm going to name off some players who have worn the number that they had. One of them is Steven Matz, the former pitcher of the New York Mets. Another one would be, let's see. It's flip the numbers for
Jim
Michael
Brown.
Jordan. Jim Brown wore this number. Yes, that's right, for those paying attention. The Michigan offense had 32 yards passing today.
However, doesn't make a difference when Donovan Edwards, Kalel Mullings, and Alex Orji helped actually a Michigan team go up against a pretty good USC defense and run for 290 yards and 3 touchdowns.
Oh, absolutely. No, and that's what I was getting to. Michigan's rushing attack has not taken a step back with the loss of Blake Corum, Jim Harbaugh, and Zinter and those boys at all. But I will say this. If USC's defense is not a traditional Big Ten defense, can we agree on that?
Absolutely.
They're going to have real problems against the Michigan States, the Iowas, the Ohio States, those teams of the world, if they can't throw the football.
Can we bring up Michigan's running game for a second here? That you notice the recurring theme in the last few years since they've actually come back to prominence, that they have a running back who is predominantly all world. He basically, the following year, you would think that he actually would kind of maintain that level, and then somebody comes in and supplants them, and then that guy turns into it was Mike Bell was his name. The first year that they beat Ohio State, it was, and then you thought it was going to be Blake Corum, and then Corum gets hurt, and then Corum comes back and has the great year last year, and then Donovan Edwards is thought to be all world, and then now Donovan Edwards, thought to be the number one, but yet Khalil Mullings rushes 17 carries, 159 yards today, and basically is Michigan's feature back. And yet Donovan Edwards, there's still a lot of people thinking that he's going to be the best NFL prospect out of that team next year.
No, agreed. The running back room in Ann Arbor is very, very good. I will say this, Jim. I think this is one of your favorite phrases. Some of column A, some of column B. This is the best unit on the offensive line in college football. I believe that a big, big part of Michigan's running game is the fact that their offensive line can be dominant at times. Now, I will say this: they can't pass block for shit, but they can run block like crazy.
I
And
absolutely,
that's
I absolutely agree. And this is kind of going back to when, Cade McNamara was there. Is that they won games with their running game, and then their quarterback just did not have to turn the ball over. He didn't. You don't put up a whole lot of yards. Half the time, you don't even get to 150 through the air, which is exactly what Alex Orjai did today. I'm not going to say it how everybody else typically says it.
that's because episode 69 was 15 weeks ago.
Yeah. So. But I mean, this is something where, yeah, they get their doors blown off by the Longhorns a couple of weeks ago. But quite honestly, that's going to look a lot stronger if Michigan continues to play this well and realize that, hey, they're not in for a 3-4 loss season. They could still be a potential 2-loss team, even if that other loss is to, that team in Columbus, right around Thanksgiving, but and still get themselves in line to, get into the tournament and defend their title, because I don't know if right now there's a team playing better in the country than Texas, and Texas would have put 50 up on anybody, including the Buckeyes right now.
No, I agree. I don't know if they put 50 up on the Buckeyes, but I hear what you're saying.
Well, the difference is that the Buckeyes probably still would have put up 35, 40 of themselves, but Texas has got that offense right now clicking better than probably half the teams in the NFL do.
And scarily, they're doing it with their backup.
And that's the scariest thing, is that they've got two. Can we already call them NFL caliber ready quarterbacks, and one of them's a true freshman?
I don't think Arch is ready yet. Honestly, I don't.
He's showing, but basically everything that you read and what he's done, and if he continues to do that, I mean, he's going to be up for some awards next year as a sophomore.
Agreed. He's a sophomore this year, by the way. He was true freshman last year, and they did not redshirt him, which I was very surprised about, by the way. But let me say this about Texas. People got to watch and this is funny. I'm saying this about Texas and Michigan. People got to watch the tape from that game. You want to beat Michigan, you got to do what Texas did. Texas made Michigan one-dimensional and made them have to throw the football. I honestly think that if you're the D coordinators in Happy Valley, in Columbus, and East Lansing, you need to watch the Texas game and understand that Michigan doesn't have a quarterback who can beat you with his arm. They don't. And quite honestly, you know my feelings about JJ. They haven't had one for several years. But those teams still ran the shit out of the football and played keep away and dominated time of possession. And if they're going to do it again, they're going to win some games. Watch the Texas tape, go to school on it, and I bet you can beat this team. Now, speaking of teams that should have won big today, what the hell happened to Mizzou against Vandy?
I'm not actually going to make excuses, but this is not your typical bottom-dwelling Vanderbilt team. Remember, this is a Vanderbilt team that beat Va-Tech on the road, and Vanderbilt may be in line for a bowl, but this was also kind of a letdown for I want to say that Mizzou took their foot off the gas after the big win over Boston College last week, which, was still a little bit closer. They're still trying to figure things out, get their footing. Brady Cook's still trying to actually figure out, does he actually want to be Tom Brady, or does he want to be, does he want to actually, be Connor Cook at that point?
Did you almost say Kyle Brady? Little Jet fan love for you.
Would it have been better if I would have said Wayne Brady?
Dude, stop. We've had a in our conversation so far, we've had a scenes from a hat reference and a Wayne Brady reference all in the same episode. I think we're doing okay today. I will say this: this is not your dad's or last generation's Vandy. They are a very good team this year. They have some weapons on the outside, and their quarterback plays better than it has been since Jay Cutler. To be honest with you, but I just want to bust your ass a little bit about Mizzou, and
although Vanderbilt, their next 4 weeks, they host the Tide, in 2 weeks. They're at Kentucky on the 12th. They're home to Ball State, and then they host number 1 Texas on the 26th.
Yeah, they've got it,
and then finish out their regular season home to South Carolina, at LSU, home to Tennessee. That is an absolute. That might be the most unfortunate schedule for any team in the country right now, playing that level of top tier talent all the way through.
I would look at Florida's schedule. And I would say that Florida's schedule is probably just as hard, if not harder. It's just the fact that Florida's garbage.
I completely agree, and that's actually, as a Gator fan, that's what's scaring me, is because as much as as much of a Mizzou fan as I am, I don't want to see Coach Eli Drinkwitz end up down in Gainesville, because Billy Napier is basically dead man walking right now. If there's talk,
he really is.
There's talk if they would have lost to Mississippi State today, which thankfully they did not, he would have actually been fired the minute he got off the plane down in Gainesville.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't have let him get on the fucking plane, to be honest with you, if they'd have lost to Mississippi State.
The big problem right now in Gainesville is that they've actually got a new university president who a lot of people are giving shit about for some of the financial decisions he's made. They just built a brand new $82 million football venue, not so much renovating the stadium, but a new $82 million, football facility. And they would actually have to pay Billy Napier the better part of $28 million, because he's signed a 5 or 6 year contract, and he's only into the second week of that, or the second year of that. He's also got the lowest winning percentage of any Florida coach in the last 35 years right now.
Yeah, he's had a rough time. Let me say this. Florida, while still being a marquee program, is more of a marquee program on its past. Its most recent past being the 2 championships Urban Meyer won. Yeah, Billy's going to go at the end of the year. But the question then becomes, who's your hire? Because they're going to want, it's the same conversation we've had about Ryan Day. The question is, it's a big job. Who's your hire? And unfortunately, the scuttlebutt started about Urban. He's already shut it down. He goes, that door's closed. I'm not doing that. If James Franklin has a good year, he's not going to leave Penn State, so you're not going to get a guy like that. Listen, SEC teams have the patience of my 3-year-old, which is to say none. So I'd be interested to see who their hire is, honestly, Jim.
And if you also think about it, in the last 25, 30 years, the SEC has also been synonymous with coaches basically being there forever. Herb, Saban, Phil Fulmer, the old ball coach,
Spurrier.
Yeah, Spurrier for
Kirby.
a while. Exactly. And even Mark Richt before him.
He was there a long time too. Yeah, no, and that all started with Bobby Bowden being at Florida State for forever and a day. These Southern schools like, let's get us a coach who's going to win and let's keep him, and they kept him. Now, unfortunately, they had such a culture of winning for so long. Any hiccups, and they think they have to make a move. Billy's had 2 recruiting cycles. Let's see what he can do.
Speaking of hiccups, and talking about a university that you just brought up seconds ago, Florida State is only leading 7-6 with 4 minutes to go in the third at home against Cal in an ACC conference matchup.
Again, weird to me.
And this is Florida State possibly going 0-4 for the first time in what, 40 years, and Cal could be going to 4-0 if Cal comes back and wins this, even though they're only down a point. They have the ball at their own 37.
I can't even. I'm more worried about the 7-2 game in Washington right now between Northwestern and Washington.
So let's actually go down the scoreboard here, and we'll actually, you'll see those blowouts galore here. So according to what I've got with my ESPN feed, I'll start with the finals. Back on Friday, we had number 24 Illinois over number 22 Nebraska, 31-24 in overtime, which was a very good game. I watched a little bit of it. Earlier today, we actually had Buffalo going to 3-1 in the MAC, knocking off number 23 Northern Illinois.
Oh, wow.
In overtime. Clemson gets back on track, and we actually think that Clemson's not done yet with a 59-35 hammering of NC State, where they led 43-7 at the half and took their foot completely off the gas.
Yeah, they did.
We had number 20 Iowa State with having no problem with Arkansas State, 52-7. The Cyclones are now 3-0. We had number 19 Louisville downing Georgia Tech, 31-19. The Cardinals are now 3-0. Notre Dame gets back on track with a 28-3 win over Miami of Ohio. A Miami of Ohio team that a lot of publications, most notably Athlon Sports, were picked to win the MAC. And now Miami is 0-3. Notre Dame now goes to 3-1. Number 16 LSU takes down UCLA 34-17. The Tigers are now 3-1. In one of the better games of the day that I actually popped in for a couple of minutes on, number 12 Utah goes into Oklahoma State and takes down the Cowboys 22-19. The Utes are now 4-0, and Oklahoma State is now 3-1.
Footnote about that game, you had two seventh-year seniors at quarterback in that game.
Van Wilder, eat your heart out.
Exactly.
It was Van Wilder against what was Tommy Callahan, or what was his name in Black Sheep?
Tommy Callahan. No, you're thinking Tommy Boy.
Yeah.
They said it looked like Cam Rising was the pirate, and the quarterback from Oklahoma State was the British captain that was told to send him to Davy Jones.
So was it Danny Cannell versus Brandon Weedon?
No, there was more talent than those two.
We already talked about number 18 Michigan holding serve over number 11 USC 27-24 on the walk-off touchdown by Mullings with 1 second to go. Number 10 Penn State has absolutely no trouble with Kent Wright, Kent State 56-0. Number 3 Ohio State picks up another out-of-conference win against an inferior opponent. Had to get that in there. 49
You're such a hater.
Marshall in a game that they struggled for a good chunk of the first half, and there were a lot of people already saying that, could they be in trouble because they got gifted a lot of calls, especially that muff punt illegal procedure crap.
No, it wasn't. That was the exactly right call. Because if you look at it, when Gus and Joel went back, those two guys on the end.
That's everybody's first problem, is listening to Gus Johnson, who is Jim Lachey with a louder microphone.
Yeah, he went to Michigan.
Joel
was the one talking about it. Joel was the one talking about it.
I turned it on for 2 seconds. I saw that they were calling the game. I immediately muted it and went to a different game.
See, I prefer them.
He's in Gus Johnson anymore is insufferable for me with his homerism. He is quickly gaining ground. Like he's now preparing to pass in the short shoot Pat McAfee for most annoying commentator in sports, in my personal opinion.
I feel the hate within you.
Games going on right now. Number 1 Texas having no trouble with Louisiana Monroe, 28-3. About a minute and a half left to go before halftime. Number 5 Ole Miss leading Georgia Southern 24-7. That game has just gone to the half. Number 25, Texas A&M with a 20-10 lead over Bowling Green down in College Station. The big one that a lot of people were pointing to is really what we're thinking it was going to become, and that's number 6 Tennessee, 19-3 in Norman against Oklahoma, in Oklahoma's first ever SEC game since jumping conference, and that game just went to the half. Number 8 Miami in a dogfight right now. They've just started the third quarter, but Miami's already out to midfield and a 22-15 lead over South Florida. And again, we already talked about with the way that everything lines up for my favorites. Number 7, Mizzou, with a 30-27 win in double overtime against Vanderbilt.
And also at the half, it is 14-7 Minnesota in a Big Ten matchup between Iowa and Minnesota in Minnesota. So PJ Fleck and the boys are rowing the boat to a halftime lead. I will say this. So a lot of these out-of-conference games, the teams are having pretty good showings. And yes, the Bucks did struggle. Bad turnover by Will Howard. There was no reason to throw the route he did. But I will say this. They seem to be the type of team that they get out a kink or two and get a big play, and they're gone. And they just put the foot down. So let's see what happens next week when they get Michigan State.
2 more Big Ten scores that I actually peeked in on highlights on, and you know, don't sleep on these teams. Rutgers goes to 3-0 after going into Blacksburg and taking down Va Tech 26-23. And Va Tech now 2-2, but their 2 losses were to Vanderbilt and Rutgers, both at home, and 2 teams on the come up.
Yeah, no, Rutgers they got a great squad. Greg Schiano in his second tour of duty there has done a great job in the few years that he has been there to bring them back into some kind of prominence in the Big Ten. They're not quite there yet with the upper echelon, but they'll get there.
And the last score before we move on to topic number 2 tonight, the Hoosiers of Indiana with a 52-14 win over Charlotte in Bloomington. The Hoosiers are 4-0, and they're not going to get in the top 25, but they're going to get some votes.
No, they are. And they are playing very, very well. They also go into their conference schedule next week. So let's see what a newly revamped Indiana team can do in the Big Ten. I was very shocked Illinois won that game Friday night.
Indiana's got a schedule that sets up pretty well for them too over the next few weeks. They will host Maryland next week. They'll go on the road to Northwestern, which is a winnable game, and then they host Nebraska and Washington, and then they actually kind of get a little bit of a murderer's row at the end of the year where they're at Michigan State, home to Michigan, at Ohio State, and then the big rivalry game against Purdue to end the season. So the next month could be very interesting if you're a Hoosier fan.
Yeah, I think, like you said, that sets up pretty well. They got the gauntlet there because they do have to play some of the upper teams in the Big Ten. But I think they'll do it. They'll show very well. They could be a sleeper team that could try and blow some of this up for the bigger guys.
Well, we're going to move on to topic number 2 for tonight. And we're going to stay on the gridiron, and week 3 is officially underway, and basically now it's looking more like a hospital ward, no pun intended, to the Browns all-pro cornerback. But we've got a lot of pretty big names that are going to be out or hurt, and is it really news when when Aaron Rodgers gets his first win as a Jet against a team that's going to be drafting in the top 5 again next year?
No, but it's a second win as a Jet. They're 2-1 now.
I'm sorry, I misspoke. What's the name of the quarterback for the Jets?
Cheech Marin?
I think Nikki Glazer has dubbed him Throw Rogan.
Wow. Hey, speaking of Throw Rogan, let me give you a little trivia piece that I heard the other day, or today, actually. Aaron Rodgers has over 480 touchdown passes in his career. Great career. Can't argue it. Do you know his touchdown to Garrett Wilson Thursday night was the first time he threw a touchdown to a first-round wide receiver in his entire career?
Yeah, because he had a. Oh, the one thing I don't like about the ESPN app is why are you giving me final score alerts for preseason?
Oh, hockey?
Yeah, as the Sabres down the Penguins 7-3 in preseason hockey tonight.
Nice. Yeah, that's I turned off the alerts with ESPN, but I found that to be interesting. And when people say he shouldn't have been so critical of what the Green Bay Packers did, think about how long he was the starter. Think about all the wins. Think about the Super Bowl, and he never threw it to a first-round wide receiver.
Well,
So
that's, I mean, well, keep that in mind is because when he finally took over, he was doing it with guys like Donald Driver and Darren Sharper and everybody who were Favre's guys, and they were playing so well that they would have a back end first round pick. That receiver was definitely not the target at that particular point. That's where you actually fill your offensive line and defensive holes. So it made sense that you were never going to be drafting high enough to be able to need a skill position player like that. So it's surprising, but yet it's not all in the same breath.
agreed, absolutely. But at the same time, they did have a couple of years where they had picks for trades where they were up into the mid-teens. You can get a good wide receiver there in the first round, and they'd make different picks, and you're kind of scratching. He's getting toward the end. Why are you not giving him weapons? And he'd go out and do it with dudes off the fucking street. And he turned Devontae Adams into what he is now. It's just I found that very interesting.
The second biggest locker room cancer in football behind Stephon Diggs.
He wasn't a locker room cancer until Josh Allen started throwing the ball to everybody else and their fucking mother instead of him.
No, because he forced his way out of Minnesota.
No, he didn't. They decided to pay Thielen instead of him.
Yeah, because they didn't want to deal with his shit anymore.
You didn't hear a bad word about him until he got to Buffalo.
Yeah, and he could. How can you not gel with Josh Allen? And then there's already talk that there might be some sort of discontent brewing. Watch with it by this time next year. He and Stroud are going to butt heads.
If that's the case, he'll be gone.
This is his pattern. He's basically he's Odell Beckham Jr. with less athleticism but better route running.
I think that's an accurate description. So Tua obviously goes to the IR. Thank God. I still think he should hang it up. Just me.
He's going to be the only one who's going to be able to make that decision, though. But unless something comes back and he doesn't clear protocol in the next 4 weeks, or something happens in practice and they don't clear him.
Yeah, no, I would honestly think that the Dolphins are going to shut him down.
There's a part of me that's starting to believe that Tua may have thrown his last pass, not so much for his entire career, but certainly for 2024.
I agree. Miles is playing on 2 bad feet. That's not good for this Browns team going into a game against a very beatable Giants team. I don't think it'll matter much because the Giants are just fucking god awful.
I mean, if ever you were going to sit him because he's still a game time decision, they have not ruled him out yet. He's still questionable. That do you really need him for tomorrow? Probably not. Can you maybe sit him next week against Washington as well? Possibly. Let him actually rest a couple of weeks and actually get him right.
Yeah, no, I would definitely wonder if that, especially with the gauntlet they got to run at the end of the year.
Yes.
You need him healthy for the hardest part of the schedule, which is coming down the stretch. George Kittle is out. Mixon is out. Fatanu is from Pittsburgh?
Pittsburgh.
The
offensive lineman.
Okay. But let's get to that last one. Let's talk about Bryce Young. And now let me say this. There are 2 ways I can go with this. I can go with this that the Carolina Panthers are absolutely god fucking awful. A horribly run franchise, a poverty franchise at that. Or I can be a dick and say, oh, look, another Alabama quarterback can't get out of his own fucking way. There's 2 ways to go with that, and neither one of them are fully incorrect. It's just the other part's just being a real dick. Did you happen to hear what Baker said when they asked Baker the question this week in his immediate availability in Tampa? And he basically said Bryce is going to be fine. He said, "Look at me. I finally got to a place where I had the right coaches, the right people around me." He said, "Better fit than I was anywhere else. Not to put another team down, but the proof is in what we're doing." And he's absolutely right.
He's absolutely right, and I was going to write a sports note about this in the days after it happened, but I figure we're going to. Excuse me. Oh, that one hurt.
Oh, that came through the nose.
Yeah.
Those are the worst.
Oh yeah.
Especially Dr. Pepper ones.
And especially the zero sugar ones where there's a little bit extra sweetness in it.
They burn like hell as you take another swig, you dumbass.
Dehydrated as fuck right now. It's still 81 degrees and muggier than shit here in Cleveland for late September. That's again, you moved down there. That shouldn't be happening up here right now.
No, I agree.
With the heat index, it's going to be 91 degrees down at what did we call it? Hubify.
Not to be confused with Hooba Stank. Although with the way the Browns played the first week, you could have called it Hooba Stank.
There's got to be. Could I like use an AI generator to basically mock it up like the Disturbed song "Stupefy"?
Ooh, you and your ideas. So I think Bryce Young's days in Charlotte are over. For this reason.
I don't, but I don't think it's for the reason you're going to get to. But go ahead.
What were you going to give me?
I was going to say that basically they're not going to give up on the kid because quite honestly, Andy Dalton's not going to be the answer. He's also 900 years old. So he's going to see the field again, but it's going to be more so out of necessity because you got to get him out there and at least be able to see what you can do if you're going to plan on moving him. Because at this particular point, either he's going to resurrect himself and start to kind of move forward a little bit, or we're going to have a Josh Rosen scenario all over again.
I think we're heading toward a Josh Rosen scenario all over again because let's be honest. Canales, the new head coach, he worked with an undersized quarterback in Tampa. But the Carolina Panthers have gotten the quarterback right twice in their entire existence. They got it right. Well, we'll give them 3 times. Kerry Collins was very good there when they first came into existence.
He got him to the Super Bowl.
That wasn't Kerry Collins. That was Jake Delhomme. That was Jake Delhomme. Jake Delhomme got them to that Super Bowl. I always
forget about Jake Delhomme because he played here.
Yeah. Well, Jake Delhomme got them to that Super Bowl against New England. And then they Cam. And well, I was saying, so then 3 times. Kerry Collins, when they first came in, because that was the year they had the big run in the playoffs.
That was the year where Carolina and Jacksonville both made the conference championship games in only their 3rd season.
Yep. And then you had Cam. And as much as I call him scam, as much as I don't like the guy, Cam Newton went to a Super Bowl. Cam Newton won an MVP in a 15-1 season. Yeah, they haven't gotten it right since. The Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold experiment has proven that Carolina is not the place for either of those guys to play, as both of them are leading teams to wins now. But I think Bryce Young is going to be gone for 2 reasons. One, I think you're going to have a trade partner in Miami who's going to need to get a quarterback.
Because now Miami's out there running Skylar Thompson.
Exactly. And you're not going to, if you're Miami, you're not bringing back Ryan Tannehill. And if Tua is really done, getting his successor from Alabama wouldn't be a bad thing. They have similar skill sets. And you're giving Bryce Young the best weapons he's had since that national championship team. When he was a backup to Mac Jones on that Alabama team that ran away with a title a few years ago. But I think Miami would be willing to part with a 1st-round pick for Bryce Young. And Carolina is going to end up with the 1st overall pick this year. I can see them taking a flyer on somebody at 1, trying to get a quarterback, and screwing them up again.
Yeah, but I'll tell you this much: going out and getting him, being undersized because he was a Heisman Trophy winner. Yeah, it was taking a flyer because you were that bad, and you actually go out and you get Bryce. Let's be honest. Let's say whatever you want to be all homerish aside. Bryce Young deserved the Heisman Trophy the year that he won it,
He did.
and
He did not deserve the number one
that
pick.
makes you the best quarterback in college football. Did it necessarily translate into him being the most pro ready? No. But at that particular point, when you're the absolute worst team in football, the best thing that you can do is go out and get the best player in college football as a cornerstone. But the problem is you got to put something around him, and Carolina did not do anything out of the fact.
No, and not for nothing. If you watch any of the videos coming out of the pro days that they went to going into having the number one overall pick, both quarterback coach Josh McCown and head coach Frank Reich wanted CJ Stroud. They both wanted CJ Stroud. And the owner said no. The owner said, no, we're taking the Heisman Trophy winner. And both guys knew that was the wrong pick. And it's coming to fruition. Look, Houston has turned it around to win a division title last year and is playing pretty well so far. Not blowing it up, but I don't think that's the type of team they are. But at the same time, but Bryce Young has regressed. How you regressed from having one win the year before, I don't know.
Look over the last maybe 7-8 years with some of the really great first round draft quarterback classes we've had. We had the 2007 version. I'm sorry, the 2017 version with Baker and Josh and Rosen and Mahomes and all those guys. And Josh Rosen was the odd guy out, and everyone thought it was going to be Baker for a little bit. And Baker's now actually through 2 weeks is the MVP of the NFL. Maybe outside of Alvin Kamara, but let's actually see what happens this week. But we had Richardson, we had Stroud, we had Bryce Young, we had Michael Penix. I'm sorry, that was this year's class, but you had all these, you had those 5 quarterbacks going in the first round this year, and you can't really kind of say that JJ McCarthy is going to be the worst of that, even though he's going to be a year behind, because again, he missed the entire first year. So let's see what this, and then whether or not Penix sees the field. But it's unfortunate to think that a guy with so much promise, yes, went into the absolute worst scenario, and you feel bad for the guy that even though he may not have been the best pro ready, he was also the one that had the most upside to be able to go into to kind of move forward, because there was nowhere further for them to fall. But the problem is that it's so bad that every time you get a handhold, the rock is crumbling in your hand and you can't climb it all.
So I'm going to respectfully disagree. I don't think he was the best fit for there. I think CJ Stroud was the most pro ready, and he was going to be the best fit at number one, whether it would have been if Carolina would have taken him, and we see what he's done in Houston. He's the best fit.
But let me interrupt and let me throw the shoe on the other foot here.
Okay.
Knowing what we know now, reverse the roles a little bit. Put CJ in Carolina and then put Bryce in Houston. Do they have the same level of success, knowing that Houston, with Bryce going into Houston, still has all of those loaded picks, and CJ goes into Carolina having goddamn nothing? And he's got to do even more than what he did in Houston, with the fact that he's got no weapons around him at all.
Let me say this. Would CJ be blowing the world apart like he did last year and this year? No, he wouldn't be. I don't think he gets benched.
I don't think he gets benched either, but the difference is that also not only did CJ have the weapons on offense around him, he also had a top flight defense that was top 10. Carolina's got a bottom 5 defense, so he would have basically, if they would have actually found a way and weren't going to figure out how to pay him $40 million a year after his rookie contract, CJ Stroud would have been playing on both sides of the ball. That's how much they would have needed him in Carolina.
No, I agree with you. And let me say this about the flipping scenario. I think you would have had a quarterback that would have had a better grasp of the NFL game quicker. You have it. He's not as undersized. I think he's got a better arm, and he's more accurate off the top than Bryce Young is. So that would have given him a little bit more help to where this offseason, going into this season, the Panthers could have made changes to bring in weapons and do things like that. They didn't do that because they had faith in their quarterback.
There's breaking news. Ironically enough, no sooner are we talking about this than a story that's come down as of 9:26, less than 30 minutes ago. There are teams calling the Panthers interested in trading for Bryce Young, but there's not been teams that have been named. But it's a report coming out from Schefter.
Yeah, I just saw that too. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if it is. I wouldn't be surprised if Miami is the one calling, because Miami's the one that's going to need it. The hilarious thing would be if it's Chicago.
There's no way in hell that it would be Chicago. Let's look this over here. Let's go literally division by division, team by team. Buffalo does not need him. Miami would. New England just drafted a quarterback. The Jets won't. Baltimore won't. Cincinnati won't. Cleveland, Pittsburgh won't.
Cleveland might.
No, because they would actually put stock in Jameis Winston, and they've got Dorian Thompson-Robinson as the third. They definitely would not take a flyer on him.
Okay.
Houston, no. Indianapolis, Richardson's playing very well. Jacksonville, probably not, even though the book is still, we know about Trevor Lawrence. Tennessee, probably not, because they're not going to gamble the farm for a quarterback again that soon. Denver just drafted a quarterback. Kansas City's got the greatest of all time. The Raiders, no. The Chargers, no. Dallas, no.
The Raiders are an interesting.
The Raiders could be interesting, but here's another one. What about the New York Football Giants?
I think the Giants are interesting because they only have to pay Danny Dimes this year, and they can cut him, and it won't kill their salary cap. Plus, he'd be controllable and on a lower cap number. Another team that would be interesting there besides the Raiders, how about Seattle?
That's actually, I'm getting to there because Philadelphia won't go. Washington just drafted one. Chicago just drafted one. Detroit's got an all-pro. Green Bay's got an up-and-coming all-pro. Minnesota's set with JJ. They're not going to have him this year. Atlanta's set. New Orleans, let's actually see. But, I think New Orleans is going to be fine. Tampa Bay definitely doesn't need him. Arizona doesn't need him. The Rams, I don't think so, because they've actually got options, even though the backup option right now is Jimmy Garoppolo. The Rams got very old very quick, but I don't think they're going to take a flyer on that. San Francisco's got an all-pro. Seattle could be interesting.
Seattle?
I'm thinking right now, if I had to name four, I'm thinking Miami, the Giants, the Raiders, and Seattle.
With Miami being the number one, with just the injury situation.
We'll take those four and rank them.
Miami, the Raiders, the Giants, and Seattle. I think that Antonio Pierce.
Yeah.
I think Antonio Pierce is so pissed they missed out on a quarterback, even though they took Brock Bowers, who's been very good. He wants a young quarterback. He wants someone he can grow with because he wants to be defense first. He wants to be the Giants team that he had with Eli that won 2 Super Bowls. Again, love me to mullet. Gardner Minshew's playing great. But yeah, I think that the Raiders are a better shot than the Giants. I don't believe that the Maras are going to give up draft capital, especially not with Joe Schoen still in the front office, who's going to lose his job.
The more that you talk about that, let me throw this at you. And I actually like that Raiders idea a little bit more here. Think of it this way. He was the Heisman Trophy winner. He was the starter for 2 years down there in Tuscaloosa. But you notice he played his best games at neutral sites in climate-controlled areas. We're talking playoffs and SEC championships. And what are those places? They're domes and on turf. What is Allegiant Stadium? Dome and turf.
I agree with you.
Weather.
I agree with you. Now, I will say this. If that's where you're going with that, and we know what, let me bring up Billy's name for a second. We know what he hit, and because I've beaten this into like a dead horse, what his record was outside of a dome on turf before the move with the Browns. These teams have got to figure out how to test these guys. And I think the playoff will do that with now having to see possibly a Southern quarterback go north during the playoff to play a higher seeded team and play in the cold, that you're going to get a better look at them. But if that's the case, remember, the Raiders still have to go to Kansas City. They have to go to Denver, and they play the Chargers, which, again, SoFi is SoFi. So, again, you're guaranteeing a guy 2 trips to hostile environments you're going to play Kansas City toward the end of the year. In bad weather, you go to Mile High in November. He's going to see snow for the first time this fucking month.
I was gonna say Denver's gonna start seeing snow in about 3 weeks anymore. If you figure
probably a couple of days.
Yeah.
So it's going to be interesting where he lands. I think this is going to be the most interesting part of the season until we get to November. Is what's Carolina going to do with Bryce Young, and what's it going to cost to get him? You think it costs a first-round pick?
I think if you're the number 1 overall pick, I think absolutely it's going to be a first rounder.
Now, let me say this. Coming off a bad year, and granted, we all know the reason why.
I could actually see a 1 and like maybe like a deferred 4 or like a conditional 5 or something like that. Or if you're going to do straight up a 1, they'd actually have to do something else and maybe like kick in 50% of the salary.
Well, I will say this. The last number 1 pick who was traded was for a 5.
Last point on this before we move on. I'm already starting to see people talking that he's the biggest number 1 overall bust in history. Is it too soon to say that? Because Carolina has been that bad and put him in that bad of a situation. Let me throw out probably the worst stat I might have ever seen, and that's including the Browns going 0-16 several years ago. In the last 10 games, the Carolina Panthers have only led 10 seconds.
Wow. So there's 2 schools of
thought. And you're going to put all this on a 23-year-old second-year player that you took number 1 overall in the worst situation in sports right now.
Well, let me say this.
There's arguably outside of the White Sox.
You brought them up. Let me say this. There's 2 schools of thought on being the biggest bust. First of all, Jamarcus Russell's a tough act to follow. Second of all, if you put everything on the quarterback, then yes, he's in the running. But third of all, and most importantly, there is not a single quarterback or single NFL player who's picked high that if he goes to the wrong spot, isn't going to play well. Sam Darnold and Baker Mayfield and even Jared Goff are prime examples of this. Prime examples. Baker lands after tumultuous 2022 in Tampa last year, and what does he do? He does something only one other quarterback in Tampa Bay history did, and gets him a division title. And now the first few weeks this year, he's playing like his hair's on fire, and he's in the right spot. Who the hell would have thought Sam Darnold had the Minnesota Vikings winning games like this after JJ got hurt? It's about where they land. So
let me just go through it here. Number 1 overall picks going back to 2000. Caleb Williams, jury's still out. We know Bryce last year. Trayvon Walker, jury's still out, but he looks like he's going to be something special down in Carolina in 22. Trevor Lawrence got a Pro Bowl in 2022 and actually got the Panthers a division title and a playoff game. Joe Burrow got in 2020, number 1 overall, got him to a Super Bowl. Kyler Murray was a Heisman Trophy winner, Offensive Rookie of the Year, 2-time Pro Bowler, 2019. Baker Mayfield, Pro Bowl in 2023, 2 playoff appearances, couple of playoff wins. 2017, Myles Garrett, arguably one of the best number one overall picks in the last 25 years. Jared Goff got the Rams to a Super Bowl. He's played in 3 Pro Bowls in 2016. Jameis Winston in 2015 had quite a bit of success for his time in Tampa before it all went downhill. Jadeveon Clowney, we make fun all we want to for his last few years, but he's played in 3 Pro Bowls, albeit with the injury history. Eric Fisher with the Chiefs won 2 Super Bowls. He's also, won a Super Bowl, played in 2 Pro Bowls. Andrew Luck went to 4 Pro Bowls. Cam Newton was the 2015 MVP. 2010, Sam Bradford was the Offensive Rookie of the Year, got the Rams to a playoff. Matt Stafford went to 2 Pro Bowls and won a Super Bowl. Jake Long in 2008 with Miami went to 4 Pro Bowls. Jamarcus in 2007. Next question. Mario Williams in 2006 went to 4 Pro Bowls with Houston. Alex Smith went to 3 Pro Bowls in 2000 after being number 1 overall for the 49ers in 2005. Eli Manning, 2 Super Bowls, 2 Super Bowl MVPs, 4 Pro Bowls. We'll talk more about him next week as the semifinalists are out for the Hall of Fame. Carson Palmer in 2003 went to 3 Pro Bowls, had a lot of success with Cincinnati for a time. David Carr was a Super Bowl champion with Houston, although in a backup role. Mike Vick, say what you want about his off-field crap, was still very good on it. 2000, Courtney Brown. 1999, Tim Couch. And then you look at the 3 years before that. 98, and I know I'm going back a little bit further. 1998 was Mr. Cut That Meat himself,
Peyton Manning.
1997, Orlando Pace.
Oh,
And
that's right. He was 97.
In 1996, Keyshawn Johnson.
I think that's the most recent time a wide receiver was taken number 1. Yeah, Jamarcus is the biggest bust. Because even the guys who didn't do a whole lot, like you can argue Carson Palmer didn't do a whole lot, but he won how many division titles in Cincinnati and won playoff games? Sam Bradford.
You could say Derek Carr. Yeah, Sam Bradford.
David Carr.
Sam Bradford, as a Rams fan, Sam Bradford did not live up to number 1, but he was still serviceable enough where he's not going to fall in. He was a bust, but he wasn't, all-time bust.
But Bradford's issues were injuries, not bad play.
Yeah.
David Carr is another one who was in a horrific situation. He got the fuck beat out of him in Houston.
Because remember, they were basically an expansion team.
They were an expansion team when they drafted David Carr. But yeah, no, I gotta go with Jamarcus there. Everybody else who was a number 1 pick had some kind of success story to go with their number 1 status. So let's round out the hat trick with my favorite topic of the night.
And we got 2 minutes before halftime, so
asshole. Major League Baseball's playoff picture. First things first, let's throw some flowers to the 2024 American League Central Division champion Cleveland Guardians. For the second time in 3 years, under first-year manager Stephen Vogt, the Gardos take their place at the top of the division that they have basically owned since it was created. Did you hear Hammy's call the walk-off to get them in the playoffs?
14 times since
1995.
Yep.
Did you happen to see my post that went along with me sharing?
Was that about the Lane Thomas homer that he
No,
called?
that was about the poverty fucking franchise that everybody else in that goddamn town puts in front of this one.
Yeah, but here's another really, really cool story. For the first time,
since 1995.
Yeah.
I knew exactly where you were going.
And the Browns, the Cavs, and the Guardians/Indians have all made the playoffs in the same calendar year.
That's crazy. I mean, it's also very cool. I mean, the sports scene in Cleveland is still it's top of the list. I mean, as bad as they looked in week 1, the Browns are still a roster that can do something with competent play under center. The Cavaliers have just put the core back together and said, let's run this fucker back and get it done.
With a
And of
guy
course,
who probably is going to make more adjustments in the first quarter than their previous guy did the entire second half all season.
well, J.L. Pecklerickle was never a great coach when it came to those things.
You don't you mean MZ Crunderdunder?
We got to come up with names. Now, I will say this: I don't like him in Detroit because of what he built in Cleveland, and he has an actual star in Detroit. So yeah. They're going to be good in a few years. But let me go back to the guard.
We'll talk about that in 2 weeks when we have our preview, and we'll talk about that at the end of the show.
Yeah, let me go back to the Gardos real quick, just to say this. They're going to get a bye with Houston not quite to 85 wins yet. And
yeah, we were talking just before we went on the air with Kansas City's 9-0 loss to the Giants earlier this afternoon. The Guardians clinched the American League Central. They are now just a half game back of the Yankees, who are in Oakland right now. Could be mathematically tied with the Yankees, even though the Yankees own the tiebreaker with a 4-2 series win, a regular series win over the Guardians. But the Guardians, I want to say their magic number is 4 for clinching a first round bye over the Houston Astros,
which they'll get to. And as far as the games going on right now, where are the Yankees? And they're not even on the list here.
I mean, it's the Yankees and it's Oakland, who are now in their final homestand in
that's fucking sad. That's fucking sad.
Yeah, but if you think about it over the last 15 years, I all due respect and everything to Willie, is it? Yeah, I'll play it. I already have it.
I'm here so I won't get fined.
Thank you. But no, in all seriousness, for the A's to not hear the Oakland Athletics, it is kind of weird. And I'm sure people who rooted for them when they were in Philadelphia, when they were still around, hearing them in Kansas City and Oakland was weird for them too.
I mean, my dilemma right now is that do I actually change the logo on my website to read Sacramento for the next 2 years, or do I just the day the regular season ends, do I just change it to read Las Vegas with the Oakland colors?
Could be. Also, the Brewers.
I mean, here was me going over things and realizing, oh shit, I never changed the Sacramento Kings look from the purple and slate gray to now going back to the purple and black. It's like they changed that last year, and where was I?
You were worrying about other teams. The Brewers clinched the Central Division. Of course, the centerpiece of the locker room celebration was Bob Uecker. And then, did you see what they did at Jackson Churio?
I heard something about it, but I didn't get too much into it.
They put non-alcoholic drinks in a fucking baby stroller and put his jersey on it because Jackson Churio was 20 years old.
Right.
He's not old enough to imbibe alcohol legally yet, but he's in Wisconsin. I thought that was like 12.
No. That's wait, I was gonna say that was Mississippi, but that's like age of consent down there, isn't it?
You watch too much Archer.
Emotional damage.
You watch too much Archer. And I am from Sweden.
No, I've been seeing way too many fucking political ads lately.
Oh, where age of consent is 14. What is it? The Alabama of Europe?
Did you see, getting political for 1 second, did you see the interview bomb that somebody dropped on the dick bag from Florida yesterday?
No.
They actually asked him, he was taking questions from just regular people off the street at an appearance, and somebody said, "What's the youngest schoolgirl you've ever slept with?"
That had to be Matt Gaetz. Dude, that's awesome. It's messed up, but it's hysterical all at the same time. So going back to the playoff berth, so the Yankees, Dodgers, and Phillies all clinch a playoff berth. Of course, Philly clinches their playoff berth at the expense of my Mets last night. But that wild card race in the National League is getting interesting. All 4 teams are separated by 2.5 games. The Padres right now have the first wild card spot. The Diamondbacks are half a game ahead of the Mets, and the Mets are 2 games ahead of the Braves, with a Mets-Braves series kicking off Tuesday night. And the Mets finish up in Milwaukee, so they have 2 teams over 500 that they got to play to end the year.
And you know, especially with Lindor missing the rest of the series with injury, and they say he could be returning Tuesday at the earliest, but could it also be something that lingers through the rest of the regular season, especially if they're going to need him to be able to try and lock down that last wild card spot?
Yeah, no, it's definitely going to linger. But Luis Angel Acuna's got 3 bombs in his first 25 at bats. He has been as good as advertised. When I said I thought he had an outside shot at making the club this year, I think they did a very smart thing in not having him make the club. But I think you're looking at your second baseman for next year to go with Lindor. Speaking of the Dodgers, Ohtani, that was such.
Not only does he get that, but for what he's done, that's not just him leveling up. That's all of baseball leveling up.
Did you see what his numbers were from that game against the Marlins?
6 for 6 with 2 home runs, 10 RBIs, 3 stolen bases.
He hit 3.
It was still absolutely disgusting. Now, granted, the third one was a tater because they had a position player tossing up, meatballs at that point. So he basically was doing his steroid daddy hack impression.
Hold on.
You know what he looked like? You know what that third home run looked like? I could have sworn it was Eric Sim dropped 100 pounds. 450 dead center.
Yeah, that was definitely a daddy hack there. The Mets did the biggest troll job Friday night that I've ever seen. So Cody Clemens gave a home run to Alonso last week when they were in Philly in the blowout. They let him pitch. And the joke going around is Gary Cohen said, well, he can tell his kids he homered off Clemens, and just left it there. The other night, Cody Clemens pinch hit at the end of the game. And do you know what the caption was on his picture? Mike Piazza hit 421 off his dad.
Living in the past, man.
No. I just think it's hilarious. Which, by the way, that home run was 23 years ago tonight, by the way. So yeah, I just thought that was hysterical.
I mean, and that's remember on the last week on this show, I actually, first of all, I got proven wrong by 1, where I said the Guardians would not win the AL Central. But I also said that there's a possibility that Ohtani could go for 60 and 60. They still haven't locked up that division, and he's still going to have to go out there. 55-55 is definitely possible. He might get a look at 60-60 in the last week.
He might get a look at 60-60. Real quick, just interrupt. With 14-12 left in the game, right now it is Iowa 24, Minnesota 14. Iowa scored 17 points in the third quarter and pitched a shutout. But going back, listen, I told you if he got to 50-50, there was no way in hell Lindor was winning the MVP.
I was just going to say that, all due respect to your guy, and I don't have any affinity for him for the way that he took the money and ran out of Cleveland. Basically Ohtani locked up the MVP, and Lindor basically playing just to be able to get his name on the podium.
I think he'll be a finalist, honestly, with what he's done.
Finalist, but now it went from being a closed finalist to basically, trying to get double-digit first-place votes at this point.
No, Ohtani's going to be unanimous. And I think that's I think there's no call other than that. If Lindor had not gotten hurt, and we're talking plays every day, wins a Gold Glove, goes 35-35 with 100 RBIs, 30 doubles, and I think he's got 7 or 8 triples already, then he would have had an argument. The injury has just come at the wrong time.
I also think it was the fact that the Mets really, for the first half of the year, were dog shit.
You want to drive that knife in a little deeper? Oh, wait, I said the same fucking thing. You don't need to drive in deeper. Anyways, but let me say this, and I'm gonna put my baseball guy hat on with this one. The Phillies have problems. Their bullpen is susceptible. I don't think they did a smart thing trading Sir Anthony Dominguez to Baltimore, although he hasn't been great since he got to Baltimore. They have problems in their bullpen. You saw it today. That was a 2-2 game in the seventh. And the Mets got a couple of blue hits, made it 5-2. And then Alonso had a blue hit to make it 6-3 the final. But they've got problems in the bullpen. Ranger Suarez has not been sharp the second half of the season at all. I mean, this is a Phillies team, Jim, you and I were talking about. They're going to run away and hide. Oh, don't look now. The Mets are 5 games back with 7 to play.
Yeah, not going to happen.
No, it's not going to happen. We're saying this team, the way the Phillies were playing in the first half, you figured the only time someone would get to 5 games back would be next year when they started the season out owning the division. They are susceptible. I don't know what that will translate to in October, because right now the Phillies are guaranteed a bye because Milwaukee's not going to catch them unless Milwaukee wins out, and either them or the Dodgers are going to be the 1 seed in the National League.
Because right now the Dodgers have a half-game lead over the Phillies at 92-62. The Phillies are 92-63, and the Dodgers are already 3-3 in the fourth against the Rockies right now out at Chavez.
So yeah, this is going to be down to the wire for both those teams trying to get that 1 seed, so they have the home field advantage throughout the National League playoffs. So, and really, the National League team is going to have the home field throughout the World Series too, because both of those teams have better records than the Yankees and the Cardinals for that matter. But the Phillies
unless they clinch and rest some guys.
I don't think they can. Because the back end of their rotation has not been good. They said a stat the other night when the Mets lit up former Met Taijuan Walker. Their 5th starters are god awful, like god awful. I mean,
so if you look at it realistically, with the Mets and the Dodgers basically, with the Phillies and the Dodgers basically about ready to clinch their division here, as early, probably by Monday. Does it really matter who's the 1 and who's the 2 at this point? Because the Phillies are 26 games over 500 at home, only 3 games above 500 on the road. Consequently, the Dodgers are 22 above 500 at home and 8 over 500 away. So it's basically a wash either way you go.
Yeah, but that's a game 7. So that's the difference between having a team that's 26 games over.
I really think that the Phillies and the Dodgers would get to a game 7 if they went chalk. I don't think so.
I do.
I don't think either one has the pitching staff deep enough, and somebody's bat's going to get hot, regardless of who it is, and it's gonna turn into a slugfest with those teams. Bryce Harper against Ohtani. I'm sorry, all due respect. Well, then again, I could care less really about the Mets, the Padres, anybody else, because they don't have a legitimate puncher's chance, I think, when they get to the tournament, just because that's where the cream starts to rise. I know you said the Dodgers are going to be a one and done. I don't see that right now with the way that they're starting to click a little bit, because they're playing in the best division in the National League, arguably, whereas the Guardians right now, even though they've already locked up the division, you've still got 3 other teams in there, vying for 2 of the last 3 playoff spots.
No, I agree. Remember, the Western Division in the National League and the Eastern Division are giving all the playoff teams. Because if you figure it's the Dodgers, if it started today, Dodgers, Padres, D-backs are going, Phillies and Mets. And then, of course, Milwaukee would get, the Mets would go to Milwaukee. It'd be like the Browns against the Steelers a few years ago. Beat the Steelers to play the Steelers.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's definitely going to be down to the wire with all of it. Talking about the Yankees for a minute, if the Yankees don't figure out their bullpen shit, they're not going to last long either.
I I completely agree. I mean, they're going to hold off Baltimore because Baltimore realistically in the last month and a half has not been very good. Um, going from having what a 5-6 game lead to now 4.5 behind in that short of a period, they're going to get the number one wild card spot. At least this way they'll get a they'll host the wild card round. Um, but can we also talk about down to the wire, the one thing outside of any playoff series that everybody is looking forward to right now?
What's that?
The Azerbaijan White Sox breaking the record because when they lose tonight, they are one away from tying that record.
I don't know how I feel about that, especially with the Mets losing at Cranepool, who was one of the last connections to the 1962 Mets.
Do you think I can't believe that you want to hold on to a futility record? Do you honestly think, even as Clevelanders, as much as we actually threw a parade because of how piss poor everything was run and the way that they tanked in 2017, going 0-16, do you honestly think we're proud of that? Fuck no. The fact that you can't win a game and you guys are actually, and you still want to actually hold on to your Mets fandom for losing 120 games.
It's more about losing 120 games and drawing 3 million fans. No, and if any team could take it away from them, the Azerbaijan White Sox of our esteemed colleague, Mr. Alex Ruiz, they would be the ones I'd want to take it because I need to be able to hold that over somebody's head.
It's just, I'm going through all the numbers. The Azerbaijan White Sox have a run differential of negative 314. The
Jesus.
next closest team are the Rockies at negative 225. The largest run differential to the positive in all of baseball are the New York Yankees at a plus. I'm sorry, I take that back. The Dodgers at a plus 135 and the Yankees are at plus 134. So you realize it is so bad that the Azerbaijan White Sox have a negative run differential nearly 3 times that of the Yankees. 2.5.
And did you hear they're going to cut payroll?
So what? They're going to actually start auctioning off TVs like Cincinnati did.
I think so.
At Paycor Stadium.
I think so. So
how much more can you mortgage off? I mean, what are they going to raise the property value out? Where Alex lives to be able to cut payroll at that point because you can't cut anything more out of that stadium.
Basically,
been coddling these guys too much.
Shit.
It's too late. He's not listening.
Call the stewardess, Vaughn. I need one of those.
I don't think there's a stewardess. There is no stewardess.
I wonder if there are any pilots.
Dorn with the fucking sleeping mask up. Oh my gosh, we're 1 week left in the baseball season, which is hard to believe. Could this be the best week, the best final week we've seen in some years?
Yeah, because if you think about it, we've got, when you go through the standings now, there are still, there's not been a team that's clinched in the American League West. Every other division's got one team that's clinched. We've got 2 division winners. But when you look at the ESPN page overall, the NL Central, with how far out in front the Brewers were, even only being, 21 games over 500, they're going to be the only one that gets in. When they clinched, every other team, I mean, I know the Cubs got officially eliminated earlier today, but even with the Guardians winning the division today, the other 4 teams in that division are still mathematically alive. The Red Sox are 2 games under 500 and still mathematically alive for the final wild card spot right now.
That blows my mind. We were talking about it off air that right now the Mets, who are the 3rd wild card in the National League, would be the 1st wild card in the American League.
Well, here's one other stat before we get ready for halftime. Michael, Do you realize this now will be the 24th consecutive year that Major League Baseball will have a brand new champion?
That's right. The last repeat champion was the 2000 Yankees, and they won those 3 in a row.
And we talked about it a few weeks ago on this show. It's the first time since what? 2006, 2006, somewhere in there, where the two teams that met in the Fall Classic last year, neither one of them is going to make the playoffs this year.
No, Arizona will be in. Arizona's the second wild card.
If they get in at this point.
Well, yeah, if they get in. I mean, you got to remember
Yeah,
two
because
things.
they're only a game out. They're only a game up. So I mean, if Arizona hits the skids and Atlanta gets warm, Arizona could be locked out.
Well, considering they don't have the tiebreaker. The Mets, I believe the Mets and the Braves both own the tiebreaker with Arizona,
They do.
having won the season series. So, yeah, that's going to be interesting. 31-14 Iowa, by the way.
That's 2 out of 3 weeks that they've scored more than 30.
Is the end coming, James? Are we waiting for the rapture?
You know what it
Iowa
is?
scored 70 points in between 2 games. They usually score 70 points between 7.
I mean, it's that black and urine.
Yeah.
A couple of other quick updates before we actually hang it up for the hat trick tonight. Texas is now up 35-3 on Louisiana Monroe. No surprise there. Mississippi's extended out to 38-7 over Georgia Southern in the waning minutes of the third. Texas A&M is now up 26-17 on Bowling Green with about 5 minutes to go in regulation. They've just gone to the fourth in Norman. It's 22-3 Tennessee over Oklahoma. Miami is up 36-15 on Southern Florida. They've just started the fourth quarter. And then Mike also just mentioned the Iowa game. And also the game about who really gives a shit, except you're only tuning in to watch one of these teams lose. And I'll give you a clue as to which one. Baylor with a 24-17 lead in Boulder, 5:37 left to go in the third quarter.
There is so much hate coming from you at times.
That's kind of what I'd like to actually do with Coach not ready for prime.
Oh, very good. A nice reference to 50 years of Saturday Night Live, by the way. But yeah, let's take our halftime, take a few minutes, recharge, and come back for a quick blast and everybody's favorite moment.
We'll see you guys in a few minutes.
See you.
Might have been our shortest halftime yet.
I think it was. Um, but hey, there's still a bunch to get to in the blast.
Yeah, one thing that also did come in as we were talking about the beatdown in Chapel Hill by James Madison, a report coming down within the last hour that Mac Brown told ESPN Saturday he's not resigning. And Brown, in his 6th year at North Carolina, he's 73 years old. It's the most points that North Carolina has ever given up. If it gets too much worse, especially after that, we knew that James Madison was still going to be good after the run that they had last year. I mean, could James Madison now start putting themselves into that? I don't want to say Appalachian State because they haven't been Division One for a while, but like maybe start approaching that Boise State, the occasional giant killer.
It's possible. I think didn't they win their bowl game against a really good team too?
Yes.
Oh, excuse me. Scary moment, real quick in the Minnesota game. Kid was going, shooting the gap, and all of a sudden you see a helmet go flying and someone not getting up. So let's hope there's nothing serious going on there in the last 6 minutes of a blowout up in Minneapolis. So Jim, let's get to the blast and let's see what we got on tap for this evening. Well, why don't we lead off because I run my mouth way too much. Let's start with you. Let's run some NHL notes, especially the stuff going on in Columbus after Johnny, and then Utah and Ottawa. Let's see what we got going on over there.
Well, in lighter notes with all three of those, and a little programming note. In 2 weeks' time, 2 weeks from tonight, we'll be coming to you live in our normal slot. It will be our NHL preview show, and we're likely going to do our NBA show as well because they'll be breaking camp. They'll be opening camp, I would say, later on that week, and then the NHL regular season will be opening the few days after that, as well as for some reason the music did not shut off in the background.
I couldn't
even though it's not playing, it's like it's still giving me the animation that it's still running. So in Columbus, Columbus Blue Jacket legend Rick Nash was actually named earlier today to take over as the president of hockey operations for a club that he spent so many years. Now, remember, he had probably more success and kind of got his playoff footing in once he went to the Rangers, but he was a number one overall pick when they came into the league. Played exceptionally well. Injuries started catching up with him, but very good when you always see it a legend coming home.
Yeah, it is. I like that especially when you get the former players involved in the front office and the future of the organization. So I kick my table there. I think that's a great move
because I also know that my Blues, to toot my own horn, really, they didn't do a whole lot in free agency except for going out and signing those 2 young defensemen away from Edmonton that we talked about earlier this year.
Yep.
But really, their biggest move was taking longtime fan favorite and longtime alternate captain Alex Steen, who announced his retirement due to back issues. And he became the assistant general manager under longtime wonderful general manager Doug Armstrong, and he's going to be learning under him for the next 2 years. And then Armstrong's going to retire after the end of next season. And then Steiner is going to be the full-time GM. So what a perfect way to learn, because the first thing you do is go out and actually take 2 young defensemen away from a Stanley Cup Finals team who, their general manager, Stan Bowman, was the general manager of your chief rival in Chicago when the Alex Beach story broke and they swept it under the rug. So
yeah, no,
what better way to screw the guy who kept screwing you for all those years?
Oh, agreed. I think that's a great move. What's going on in Ottawa?
The Senators now have a plan on the table, and I believe it's been approved for a new arena in downtown Ottawa.
Oh, nice.
which the Canadian Tire, I want to say it was the Canadian, because I always remember it as the Scotiabank Arena. I don't even remember what it's called now. It might even be the Canadian Tire Center. Um, it's needed some repairs and some replacement, and I believe that was also one of the contingencies when the team went through the sales process last year, where we were talking about, was it going to be Snoop, was it going to be somebody else, when they were up for sale.
What, did they got the new arena?
Yeah, that was,
That would be
yes,
smart.
it is the Canadian Tire Center.
Yeah, and that would be smart to do the new arena with the new owner. Good for Ottawa. It, it's my hockey watching life. The Senators were the Rangers. No, that was Vancouver. Never mind. Don't listen to me.
Yeah, but Ottawa was, remember, Ottawa was the team that was always there with Danny Heatley and Daniel Alfredson and Patrick Lalime after, his stints in Pittsburgh. But they were the team that had all that upfront talent and just never really took that next step.
Yeah, no, they were. Then they were one that they were always going to be a problem when you had to play them, especially in the postseason, because they would like to play spoiler. I mean, they wouldn't get to the finals, but they would get to the conference finals every now and again to make a deep run that way. What's going on with Utah, Jim?
Team owner Alex Smith may have subtly dropped the nickname of the franchise.
Ooh.
Even though it may not be announced until later this year, because the funny thing is that earlier today, the official Fanatics jerseys for the new season, as now Fanatics has taken over for Adidas when camps broke as the uniform outfitter for the NHL, the Fanatics uniforms are now officially on sale at the NHL's team stores, all the arenas as well as team shops in all 32 cities, and also through the official Fanatics pages and everything. But there is one team and one team only who you cannot buy jerseys for, and it is right now the Utah Hockey Club.
Really?
Yes, because those generic looking type jerseys that we saw are not going to be sold, because there is a lot of scuttlebutt going around that we will actually see the official naming of the Utah Yeti at some point this season.
Really? That's pretty cool.
So we may actually see a scenario where we have a name and a logo concept, possibly sometime after the All-Star break in January or February. And then, have those officially rolled out in time for next summer, because the 4 types of jerseys, and that's the one cool thing that I liked going back to the Fanatics thing, is because they've now rolled out 4 different types of jerseys. They've now, for the first time, I want to say in about 8 or 9 years, they are actually now going to be selling the on-ice jerseys. The actual, the official weight with the fight straps, the reinforced shoulders, the reinforced elbows, and everything, the heavyweight jerseys. They now actually have what they call the premier jerseys, where they actually have the same feel, but they're actually the crest is kind of like 3D stitched and everything. It may not have the fight strap and the reinforced shoulders, but it's got everything else. All of my jerseys are what they call the breakaway, which actually they've kind of deemed as replicas. Because the very cool thing about these jerseys right now, as I pull my Sabres one off the wall, is the material stretches and the crests are completely foldable. So you cannot crease the crests on this. So you can completely fold these and put these in a drawer if you want. And for the first time in over a decade, Fanatics will actually be selling NHL practice jerseys at a much more discounted price. So their practice jerseys will be screen printed, but they're going to be a very high quality, almost like a double or a triple layering of it. And those are going to market for about $120.
Well, I can say this: my Cavaliers jersey is a Fanatics replica, and you've seen it. Looks great. I love that jersey. It's got the fit. It's a nice feel to it. It fits me really good since I lost the weight since I moved down here.
Hmm.
I just wish they'd get that player back. Not that it's going to happen.
Right.
But yeah, no, I think Fanatics is going to do well with the NHL. God knows they can't do any fucking worse than they do with baseball.
Agreed, but remember that was more baseball's call. With Fanatics was just going with what baseball said.
Oh no,
Um,
I know.
and quite honestly, tonight was the first night of preseason games, so this is also the first time any of these players will have actually worn the new on ice product under their pads because they've been having practice jerseys since camp broke on Wednesday across the league.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a different thing for these guys now.
It's going to be pretty interesting to see with you know if those kind of come up in player interviews and everything for all the teams that I follow and some of the ones that I don't. It'd be interesting to see what they think about the jersey in the first game, although there's still going to be you're seeing a lot of um you're seeing a few starters that are playing, a few superstars that are going to play a couple of these, but these are going to be more fringe guys or guys who are just coming up to get their sea legs before they get sent down to the AHL, or rookies to be able to see if they make the big clubs or go back to their junior teams. I know my Blues played All-Star Robert Thomas, All-Star Jordan Kyrou, and All-Star Jordan Bennington tonight. But I mean, that might be the only time we see them in the preseason, at least for maybe the next 3 or 4 days at this point, before they start getting into split squad games. But you'll see some superstars out there and at least be able to kind of get their sea legs at that point.
Well, yeah, I mean, you're going to need on ice time and actual real speeds in order to be able to be ready for opening night. Especially, who opens in Finland this year?
It will be the Sabres and I want to say it's the Sabres and the Penguins, but there's going to be a few of them. I want to say that the global series, and I'll research this through the rest of the evening. But last year they actually opened in Stockholm and Helsinki, and I want to say this year they're also doing Hamburg. So I want to say that there's 3 sites going on.
Oh, okay. So yeah, those guys, I mean, they're starting a week earlier than
Yeah.
so they're going to need to get into. You're going to see stars on those teams probably play a little bit more to get to be regular season ready a little bit faster.
It is. It's going to be September 27th. You're going to have Buffalo playing an exhibition game against EHC Red Bull München in Munich. That'll be a preseason game. You'll actually have the Devils and the Sabres in Prague, Czechia, October 4th and 5th. So that'll be a home and home. And then you're also going to have the Stars against the defending champion Panthers going on in Finland, November 1st and 2nd. So you're going to actually have actual regular season games counting, kind of like what the Cavs did with the Paris trip earlier this year. So you're going to have, for the first time ever, you're going to have regular season games being taking place at a neutral site, not only internationally, but in the middle of the season, not at the start of the season, which is a very cool concept.
Yeah, it's kind of like when NFL goes to London, or like Major League Baseball now is the London series. So let's go over one. Tennessee's up in their ticket prices.
The Tennessee Volunteers are upping ticket prices 10%. Have you seen what the reasoning is?
I have not.
To pay the players.
Are you fucking serious? They don't have enough NAL in Tennessee?
I mean, you understand, it's something to be able to help offset some of the NIL, just because you also remember Neyland Stadium is the largest stadium in the country. So you figure you pack 113,000 in there, and they're paying an extra 10% in ticket prices on top of how expensive those tickets probably already are. You're basically taking care of your entire athletic, your entire NIL budget over the course of just the football season, you'd think.
Probably. I get it and I don't.
And I'm not sure I think this might only be for football. I'm not sure if it applies to any of the other sports.
And see, that's the thing. Like I said, I get it and I don't. Um, should these players get a little bit more of a cut? Absolutely. College football is a multi-billion-dollar business, especially now with the expanded season, the expanded playoff. These guys, unfortunately, there's going to be some guys who could go to the league who are going to have to pad the NIL because someone could get hurt. Having said that, to raise ticket prices to quote unquote pay for players, that's a little too fucking far.
Let me pose this question. I can't believe I've actually not thought about this. And we've been talking about NIL and expansion and everything on this show for the last 6 to 8 months. Do you think that if we ever saw a scenario which we think is starting to get closer and closer and closer, where college football kind of breaks away from the NC2A, where if you're actually having NIL money for those, that they're not, that it's basically its own separate entity, to where it's not so much going to the school, but it's going more towards, exclusively to the football program, because they don't fall under the NCAA umbrella if they're going to be part of the college football playoff committee and everything, to where, Livy Dunn is actually getting $3 million. Sure. Gymnastics at LSU, it's still under the NCAA umbrella. If the starting quarterback at LSU is getting paid $10 million and they break away and they're actually governed now by the CFP instead of the NC2A, who's to say that he doesn't, keep every cent of that, or there's not revenue sharing amongst the other programs?
I think there needs to be revenue sharing amongst the other programs, and college football has something like that. It's called paying.
Well, what I actually mean, not so much revenue sharing between all the teams in the conference, like Ohio State and Michigan and Wisconsin are not going to distribute all the way down to, I'm talking like, the football program's making 35, million or whatnot. I'm just throwing a random number out there in Columbus. Who's to say that the water polo, the lacrosse, the women's field hockey team, is not getting, an equal revenue. I don't want to say an equal, but certainly like revenue sharing with that, to where, could you actually see if they break away? Well, the Buckeye football program says, well, hey, we're the ones making the most money for the university. We get all this because we're not part of the NC2A anymore.
I think you could see that in places. As far as revenue sharing, they're doing it now. And even if they broke away, it's still, the university is still the one doing all of it. So I don't think they would be, I don't think the football programs can be that stupid. I don't think, and not that they couldn't be, I don't think they will be. I mean, because as much as they are the quote unquote top of the food chain on campus and whatnot, they would quickly become pariahs and no one would give a shit anymore.
I mean, you'd figure in certain markets, they're the top of the food chain and the pariahs, Norman, Knoxville, Tuscaloosa, Tallahassee. But I mean, if you go to Bloomington, if you go to Kansas, it's
Chapel Hill.
Yeah, Chapel Hill, Durham. We're not talking that.
No, they're the quote unquote basketball schools will.
Hell, let's think of probably the biggest one of them all and the biggest market of them all, Los Angeles.
Yeah. UCLA is not a football school. That they definitely get most of their money from the basketball program. Even USC to a point is starting to get more from there. Because I think Lincoln Riley needs to actually win a title.
Yeah, but there's a difference, is that, USC is predominantly always been thought of as a football school. They've really kind of come forward with their basketball program. I hate to actually say it, really, since the whole OJ Mayo thing, but they've actually started to progress as a program a little bit further and actually become a little bit more synonymous with being, successful in basketball. But nobody is actually going to be more successful as, a football team who could be middle of the road and yet still have an upper echelon basketball program. year after year after year. Really, outside of UCLA, maybe Kansas, but you also figure Kansas is actually their football program. If they're not in the bottom 25, they're actually contending for bowl games or in the Big 12, title picture, a couple of years ago. But Kansas was never really ever thought of a football school.
No, and your example of Kentucky is probably the best one. Of course, last week we're on the show and they're losing to Georgia 13-12. They are not a football school, but they have years. I mean, they've had a number 1 overall pick.
Yeah, but let's also be honest. They've actually not been a basketball school for really since Calipari got there because they turned them into a 1-year vocational school.
That's true. I'm not saying, but those vocational guys play basketball is really where I'm going with that. So yeah, I don't like the ticket prices up for paying players. Let's go to the first one, and then we'll get to that one, then a different topic that we didn't talk about yet, but I think you and I both are one near and dear to both of our hearts. C.J. Abrams, the wonderkin shortstop for the Washington Nationals, has been demoted for apparently being at Bally's Casino until 8 a.m. this morning, and they have a 1 p.m. game. Not for nothing. And I understand discipline and all that good shit. You haven't been playing for a fucking thing for 2 months. Who the fuck cares? Seriously, if you would have came in today and gotten 3 hits, I rooted for a team where they do that and their eyes were half shut because they had so much coke the night before they were still awake.
I completely agree, but you also have to think about the underlying thing that he didn't just break curfew. He didn't come home with team curfew at all with that, number one. Number two, kudos to him for going on easily one of the greatest runs you'll ever see if he was actually at a casino until 8 a.m., assuming he was gambling the whole time, because you'd figure any of the clubs or the bars, they're not open 24 hours. Some of them,
because it wasn't Vegas.
Exactly. But the other aspect of that is that what if he was on a losing streak and actually was just, chasing most of the time, and we don't know if he was partying or anything like that. But you also have to figure, I mean, naturally he wasn't allowed anywhere near a sports book, but if he basically went on a bender and was chasing all night, if he basically, if somebody got to him like a cooler, I mean, you've heard that term before with casino speak.
Yeah.
Now I'm kind of getting the itch where I want to go to a casino. Love me some 3-card poker, man. It's my favorite game in a casino.
Jesus.
Got one of the better house advantages too, although that's coming from the same idiot who actually loves playing roulette, where it's the highest house advantage of any game in a casino, even more than slots.
Well, you know what they say.
Slots are for losers?
No. Always bet on black.
All right, Billy Hoyle. I was watching somebody react to White Men Can't Jump for the first time the other day. Oh,
what fucking rock do they live under?
It's a channel called Popcorn in Bed. It's one younger woman. I want to say she's in her late 20s, early 30s in Canada, who's like seeing movies for the first time. Sometimes she has her sister with her, like they did Miracle during the Olympics. She had gotten, and her channel's got a couple million followers, and she had actually started watching some of Tom Cruise's movies, and then she did reaction to a couple of like the first 2 or 3 Mission Impossibles, and apparently Tom Cruise and Mick, whatever his name is, the director, McHugh,
might be,
liked her reaction so much that they actually flew her and her sister out for the world premiere of Ghost Protocol and let them walk the red carpet. Very, very
awesome.
cool.
That is very cool.
Even though Tom Cruise is a nut job, but still,
Well, agreed. Yeah. But let's get into Woj for a minute, as Adrian Wojnarowski has retired from ESPN. He's become the GM of basketball at his alma mater. Where did he go to school? didn't go to St. Bonaventure, did he?
Yes.
Hey, the Bonnies are legit. That's old Big East talk right there. All hell Western New York.
I mean, here's a guy 55 years old, you know, alma mater St. Bonnie, grew up in Bristol, so he was a hometown boy, worked up there in Bristol for all those years. Um, I mean, hell, look at the Bonnies. They have not, I mean, they had a decent run like in the late 90s, early 2000s, but really, are looking for some sort of turnaround.
Yeah, bringing in a guy with the NBA ties that he has, I'm sure he'll be able to bring guys in to help prepare the team and try and take that next step getting back. They're in the A10 now, right?
Correct. The last
Yeah.
time the Bonnies last made the tournament in 2021 and had actually made it in 2018 prior to that. So yeah, here's a school who's now going to be looking for their first tournament appearance in 4 years next March.
Yeah. So congratulations to Woj on a great career at ESPN. Very selfishly for James and I, the final Woj bomb was the Isaac Okoro contract, the 3-year, $38 million contract that Jim believes will be a sign and eventually trade. I believe that they are going to keep that core together and run it back and try and get farther than the second round this year. So James, I do want to hit one last topic that's not listed on there, and it's one that's near and dear to both of our hearts. And I think you know where I'm going.
MJF resigning for 3 years?
No, idiot. The Cleveland Browns will induct Phil Dawson into the, what do they call it? The
Legends Club.
The Legends Club. Is it? And it's this weekend.
But Phil Dawson is not the only one.
He's not. And anybody who follows the franchise
and this show in the last month,
it hurt me to hear his voice like that. The person going in with Phil Dawson will be the guy who called his first ever kick. And longtime radio voice of the Cleveland Browns, Jim Donovan, will also be inducted into the Legends Club. It's tomorrow, right?
Correct. It'll be at halftime of the Giants game.
And the Giants that is a perfect team to do it against for these two guys. Phil Dawson, an original Brown of this existence from 1999. When did he hang him up? Like 2016?
Somewhere in there, because there was still talk when they were actually, remember when Cade York started missing everything, where he actually started boomeranging shots, further than Noah Ruggles and couldn't hit water if he fell out of a boat.
Yeah.
There were people actually saying, well, hey, if Morton Anderson can kick until he's 63 years old,
where's Phil Dawson?
Exactly. Where's Phil Dawson? One more thing, getting off, speaking of guys who are basically gray and eligible for Social Security, Jaromir Jagr finally announced that he will be officially retiring from professional hockey after the end of this coming season.
Are you kidding me?
He is 52 years old and still playing in, I want to say it's the second highest level for a team that he owns over in the Czech Republic.
That's crazy.
But anyway, getting back on track here.
But Phil came into the NFL with the Browns in 1999. Played, was it all of or a majority of his career there?
Majority of. He actually also played with he was originally signed by the Raiders in 1998, was signed by the Patriots and cut out of in training camp. Played with the Browns from 1999 to 2012. Kicked 3 years with the 49ers from 2013 to 2016. Correct me if I'm wrong. Didn't the 49ers play in a Super Bowl one of those years? Yeah,
he was the kicker when Harbaugh played against his brother.
It was okay. And then kicked for the Cardinals in 2017 and 2018. He was a two-time second team All-Pro, a 2012 Pro Bowler. He was first team All Big 12 in 1996, second team All Big 12 in 1997. Career average of 83.8% and a career long of 57, 227 touchdowns, 441 field goals made, and also the all-time leading point scorer in Cleveland Browns history.
So very well deserving of this honor. And then the video that Jim and I referenced was Phil Dawson calling to tell Jim Donovan that he was going into the Legends Club. And
not even 20 minutes after Joe Thomas called Phil Dawson to tell him that he was going in.
Really?
Yeah. So Joe calls Phil to let Phil know he's inducted. And then Joe makes Phil call Jim because they came into the league together.
That's awesome. And then, of course, Jim Donovan. Jim, it pained me to hear that. I mean, you can tell you can tell. I don't want to speak it into existence. I won't say it, but you can tell.
That's why tomorrow I think is going to be a little tough, because you're probably going to see you're not going to see it on TV. You might actually see it on clevelandbrowns.com or something. They might post it later in the day or sometime on Monday or Tuesday. But I mean, if you listen to the audio broadcast, you might actually hear them do something about it. Certainly Andrew Siciliano, who's now kind of, the torch has been passed to, at least for this season. And you got to figure Andrew's going to get signed long term. They actually just with as short as, I mean, we talked about that a few weeks ago when the announcement was originally made right before the start of the season. But I think it's the right move, because they usually do this early in the season when it's still nice out. I remember I was there in 2021, and it was the third game of the season. It was the Sunday nighter against the Rams where they inducted Clay Matthews. So they do it very early.
That was 2019.
I have it right here. Hang on.
That was 19, because that was that was Clay Matthews. 21. I said 21 because I thought it was the Houston game where Baker got hurt.
Yeah, I actually have the stat sheet here. 2019.
You'll probably see it on YouTube, to be honest with you, Jim. The Browns will put that on YouTube. I don't expect Jimmy to make a speech.
I kind of do, because you also figure for him officially retiring, he never really got a chance to say goodbye in person because it was a pre-taped message. I think this is going to be him being able to officially say goodbye. I wouldn't also be the least bit surprised if he and Phil maybe kind of came into the booth and kind of said goodbye to the radio audience at some point during the broadcast, like him actually talking with Siciliano, maybe even actually, Siciliano letting him call a couple of plays and everything before he kind of, steps away for good.
Yeah, that would be, I think, a classy thing to do on the Browns side there. But it's.
Could you imagine Andrew, Nathan, Jimmy, and Phil all in the booth at the same time?
The only thing you're missing is Doug Deacon and a bottle of rum.
I mean, yeah, that would be very, very true. But just you get those four guys together, especially if it gets ugly early, and the good guys are smashing the Giants, which everyone expects them to.
That could be fun.
And you'd probably also figure that they actually, if they were to do that, they'd probably bring them in the second half at some point after the ceremony.
If it's out of hand, they'll do that. But yeah, that's hats off to the Browns for that. I should have seen that coming though, Jim, when he said he was going to retire. We should have seen Jimmy going in there pretty shortly thereafter.
And I would still like to hopefully have him be around when he kind of gets, I know the NHL has an award where when you win like broadcaster or sports writer or something, like a legendary award, it automatically inducts you into the Hockey Hall of Fame. I can't remember if the NFL does something similar.
They do. And I can't remember the name of the award because the last one I remember winning it was Joe Buck. And him and his father had both won it.
Yeah.
It's the Ford Frick Award in baseball.
Okay, yeah.
The broadcasters, Hammy's up for it every year, which needs to happen. So very cool. I will look forward to trying to find that video tomorrow post game. But it's time.
Well, let me get the damn caption off the screen first.
Well, I'm sorry.
Would you shut up and just push the button already? No, God! No, God, please, no! 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 No!
It's the YZ Translator on the Wise Guys Sports Show.
I'm forever unclean.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, it is the YZ Translator, everyone's favorite segment of the week, because it is the final segment of the week. As we have gone past the 50th episode segment that we have done, we call back some of our favorites, and mine include the very first of Jacoby Brissett being Sanika Wallace. We have the very first one where James and I had a guest, and John and James and I spent half the time laughing so hard we thought we were going to actually physically pee ourselves. The translator has given us some of our favorite moments, and it's really the only off-the-rails moments we've had in 2024 has been the stupidity that is the YZ Translator. So, James, if you would please give us tonight's Chiron so I can laugh hysterically.
I don't think you're going to laugh tonight.
You're funny and a prick all at the same time. And it's a very, very thin line that you walk, and you walk it better than most.
You were partly responsible for that tonight.
Yeah, I know. It's your old man's responsible for that shit, too.
Exactly, because I actually went. I see. The funny thing is I watched The American President earlier this week, and remember the line
good
where
movie.
Remember where she gets the fruit basket or the ham, and said it took him 10 minutes to write the card, and he went through several drafts. I went through several drafts of that, and I was actually going to call you and my father out by name. But I wanted to fit it all on one line.
That's great. And yeah, their schedule is dog shit. I fully agree with you. So James,
did you see the while we're thinking of it, did you see the subtle pot shot that Oprah and Madam Vice President took at him yesterday?
I did not. You talking about the one where she admitted to Oprah she's a gun owner, and if someone breaks in her house, they're getting shot?
It was in the same interview, but she actually said where his plan was to give an upstart business $5,000. She's like, you can't do that with $5,000. That's why we're going to give him a $50,000 kind of tax exempt to try and get the business off the ground. And Oprah says, $5,000, that's for a little teeny tiny little bitty business. And she goes, that would be the concept of a business. And it was a mic drop moment because everyone just went, no, she didn't. Yeah, she did.
She did. So James, as per usual, I will give the first name. And tonight, we spoke of him earlier, and I will go there. James, your first name in tonight's YZ Translator is now demoted number 1 pick quarterback, Bryce Young.
I would love to see him get it turned around. He is not going to be Jamarcus. He's going to probably be a lot more Sam Bradford than Jamarcus Russell. But here's an idea. Could you really do any worse than pulling Steve Smith at 904 years old out of the broadcast booth to be able to at least give him a fucking weapon?
You could do worse, like what they're doing now.
Which is nothing.
Nothing. I have nothing.
Q-tip when there's resistance.
Oh, Jesus. I don't even know if there's resistance there with fucking Tepper. He's got to be goddamn stupid. Sorry, I don't know what it is. I'm having a bad eye day.
Clear eyes. Wow. My new favorite YouTube channel. Did you see the one that I sent you earlier this week about things you remember if you grew up in the 90s?
I vaguely remember it. I was so damn busy this week.
That woman, she first of all, she's prettier than hell, but she
Uh,
put
very pale skin, bright red lips, dark hair,
yes.
all over Facebook. Love her.
She has over one night last week. I probably watched an hour and a half of these, and I had several hundred more to go because she doesn't have full length videos. She just got those 15 or 30-second YouTube shorts, and it's all stuff that we remember from the 90s or like things that girls wore in the 90s, like jelly shoes and just I'm like, oh my God, you just want to actually keep watching the next one to see how far down the rabbit hole you go for how many of these you had or how many things you remember
Oh, Jesus.
to make us actually
Jeez.
feel old but proud at the same time because some of this stuff was really cool.
Yeah, it was. Some of them are insanely cool. What do you got, bud?
Michael, your first name on the YZ translator, we did not bring him up in an earlier segment because they are certainly not where they were last year. And I hope you saw the story of what happened to him during their contest. And that would be TCU head coach Sonny Dykes.
I did not see what happened to him, but I will say this instead. Thank you for embarrassing Harbaugh a few years ago. It brought joy to my heart, Sonny. I owe you one.
Sonny Dykes got himself early in the second half, 2 unsportsmanlike penalties, and got himself tossed out.
No shit. Day got one today. What did he do to get him? Arguing with the refs? Or
Yes.
Are you kidding me? That's great.
I mean, it happens all the time in baseball. It happens all the time in basketball. Very rarely will you see it in hockey. I don't know if I've ever seen a coach get tossed out in football.
I've seen it once.
I can't remember one.
Parcells got run.
That
when
was
he was coaching the Jets.
Yeah, but that was 30 years ago.
God, shut up. You're right, but let's see. Who to give Jim for the second one? Oh, I know. Nice eyebrow.
Yeah, but I don't pretend to be a shitty actor.
You saying you are one, you just don't pretend.
With their whole stupid family taking over the programming again.
Are you saying you just are one, you don't pretend to be?
There's a story I actually want to read on ESPN where apparently Bijan Robinson fell in love with acting and is pretty good at it. It's actually on their homepage. So I kind of want to check that out tonight.
If you like that, both Nnamdi Asomugha and Thomas Jones are doing show. Thomas Jones was in Power on fucking Stars.
Yeah.
He was good too. James, your second and final name this evening in the YZ translator. Yeah, I'm gonna go here. James, your second name is the first ever member of the 50-50 Club, Mr. Shohei Ohtani.
The best thing that happened to him was that injury because we don't get this season if he's out there throwing gas as well. And could he also actually step this up and maybe go 60-60 next year?
No, he's going to pitch next year.
You sure about that?
I mean,
if you do, you throw him in the bully.
If you do, he's your closer. Speaking of, how about Tyler Glasnow got hurt and fucking disappeared?
How about also Ellie De La Cruz going 25 and 60?
25 and 60. That's impressive. And he's going to be a problem going forward. Cincinnati better lock him the fuck up now.
Absolutely. But one other guy that we were actually talking about a few weeks ago that could have been in an MVP conversation or at least an outlier in it. Demers in Boston basically be maybe out for the rest of the year.
Oh, what do you do?
I gotta look it up, but he's actually where'd it go? Anthony Joshua got knocked out today.
Yeah.
Rafael Devers on a 10-day injured list with left shoulder inflammation, likely ending his season.
Oh, that's rough.
Yeah. The
That's
Red
rough.
Sox are 5 games out of a wild card spot in the American League with 8 games remaining in the regular season. Hit 272 with 28 home runs and 83 RBIs this year. And also, we talked about it, set himself some baseball history earlier this year as well, going 40, 30, 20, 10.
Yes. Yes. The other thing, too, he had the line of the year, by the way, when he called Garrett Cole a fucking coward. Did you see that?
I did, but unfortunately, it's the second biggest thing that he said that he's going to be known for this year. And the other one was the homophobic slur that
That
got
wasn't him.
broken off.
That was Jaron Duran. That
Same
wasn't
ball.
Devers.
Okay.
Same team.
I was thinking Red Sox as well.
Yeah, no, same team, but yeah, no, Devers called Garrett Cole a fucking coward, which was great. What you got?
Michael, your last name, it's going to be outside the sports world. I'm not going to give you the first name I thought of because I couldn't remember if we've given him already, but there's been new details that came out in the last couple of days, and it's an ongoing story, and I'd like to actually see how far down the rabbit hole and how deplorable you can go with this. Your second name tonight in the YZ translator is Mr. Sean Diddy Combs.
Oh, thank you. How are you a hip hop mogul, but your favorite thing is a country song? How are you going around the world, but a burning ring of fire is your most favorite thing on the planet? And if he had, could he have more? You asked. And question. Are they going to have to start keeping track of baby oil like they do cough medicine? Because this is getting fucking stupid.
You want to watch something absolutely hilarious? You ever watched the YouTube channel Double Toasted?
I have not.
I will send this to you. They did 35 minutes on the baby oil the other day, and now the other story that there were 870 some odd
Toys?
that were pulled out of his home.
Do you think he engraved them for each person he used it on?
I don't want Marshawn. I want you to actually answer this.
Okay.
What's going to be worse? The manifest, the flight log for the Epstein flights, or the guest list at Diddy's house?
And push isn't an answer?
Take because we know the Epstein log. We know that that's 1,000 times worse for the act. But I'm just talking about which one's going to have the star quality that you really don't want to be a part of.
The Diddy one, because I think Jay-Z and Beyonce are going down too. And there's rumors that that's why Ben filed for divorce from Jennifer Lopez. There's like within, I don't want to say 24 hours of him getting arrested, CEOs of top music labels all stepped down. This is going to have some far-reaching shit, and it's, as deplorable as it gets. I mean, you could have a shot-for-shot remake of the Hard Knock Life section of Austin Powers meets in Goldmember with him and fucking R. Kelly.
Do you realize what you just said?
Yes. Yes. Here's the real question, and this is being honest.
By the way, we don't have a lack of OTRs now.
No, this one, the look on your face with the burning ring of fire mention was maybe one of the funniest things I've ever seen. Do me hit Slim Pickens for me, would you?
What in the wide world of sports is going on here?
I'm waiting for the um the baby oil versions of, hey boys, look at what I got here. You told me to go. You did this.
I did, but that actually just reminded me. There's a video I'm going to send you, and you're going to need to take 10 minutes out of your day tomorrow. And it's a compilation of YouTube streamers watching that clip with their reaction for the first time.
Please do. The other funny thing I saw, Heather, the woman who works in my office, sent me one where these two guys did a shot-for-shot remake of the Been Around the World video with him and Mace pulling baby oil off shelves at Target. Jumpsuits and everything. And finally, an old white guy goes, you guys can't do that there with that stuff. And they drop it and run. Oh, my God. There's so much more we could do with this. I mean, I want to know who he's going to get to be Tracy Morgan from Longest Yard in his facility.
Yeah, that's, yeah, because I mean, at that particular point, you're not looking at months where he's going to basically kind of get time served. You're going to be talking years.
Yeah, many years. And here's my question: over under that a Kardashians and one of them parties?
2.
I was going to say 3. I was counting the mother.
Yeah, I don't. Somebody actually might. I try to stay off of YouTube anymore because all it's filled with anymore are those Russian bots with the spam news stories and everything.
Yeah.
There was somebody saying that Taylor Swift was at one of those. It's like, there is no way in hell America's
First of all,
would ever be caught at one of those.
there is a difference between a party he threw and the after party crap that they are getting him for. Because there were Marlon Wayans was on Club Shay Shay and said, I've been to a ton of parties at Diddy's house. I left before all this went on. So there is a difference between going to a party at Diddy's house and going to a Diddy party. So could Taylor have been at a party at his house? Probably. Music industry, big as he was? Absolutely. Do I think
Taylor figured there had to be still some, distant animosity? We don't know if they hashed it out after the whole Grammy crashing.
With Kanye, yeah. Now, do I think that the future Mrs. Kelsey knows how much baby oil was there? No, I don't. Will and Jada, I think, are going to be a part of this.
Together?
Nah, she probably had 5 or 6 younger dudes. But this is bad. They used to put those at the end of PSAs about drugs, and we're talking about Diddy, and you drop a more thing. The fuck, dude?
Educational.
Oh my God.
Ish.
So next week we will see you. Hold on.
We need to close the translator.
Oh.
So the combination is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's the stupidest combination I ever heard in my life.
It's the kind of combination some idiot has on his luggage. So we will see you guys next week, 9 p.m. The 28th for episode 85. We are steamrolling to 100, which we are hoping will be the Wiseies early in 2025. Next week, we're going to have the final day of the baseball season is a week from tomorrow. We have big games next week. While we're on the air next week, it will be Georgia and Bama, as well as Ohio State, Michigan State next week. Who else? There's a bunch of big games next week.
Let me pull the schedule. Hang on. I got it right here. So next week, I don't want conference. I want, well, then again, yeah, we'll go this way. Because the rankings haven't come out. So for ranked teams, I'm seeing Virginia Tech will travel to Miami next Friday.
Mm-hmm.
Mississippi State will go to Texas. Ohio State will go to Michigan State. Oregon will go to UCLA. Illinois and Penn State is a big one.
That is a big game, especially Illinois coming off that big win against Nebraska.
Wisconsin will go to USC. The other big one is going to be Oklahoma State and K-State. Oklahoma will go to Auburn. Michigan will host Minnesota. Iowa State will go to Houston. Arkansas will go to Texas A&M. Kentucky will travel to Ole Miss. Nebraska will go to Purdue. Northern Illinois, even though they're going to drop out of the top 25, will head to North Carolina State. We talked about the Maryland-Indiana game earlier. Let's see what else we have here. Ball State will play at James Madison, who's probably going to get in the top 25. Louisville and Notre Dame will be a good one.
Utah and Arizona.
And South Alabama will head to LSU, where LSU is finishing out their non-conference schedule against Cakewalks. But yeah, the Georgia-Alabama game, that is going to be the big one.
That could also be a rematch in January or in December in the Dome in Atlanta. That's in Tuscaloosa, right?
Yes, in Tuscaloosa. And here's the thing. That game is the biggest game of the week. How do we know? Out of the entire college football schedule for all 60 some odd games that they're already, planned, even though some of the times haven't been decided, that is the only one where the point spread has actually already come out. Nothing else is on the board yet.
Well, yeah, that's been on the board for a while, though.
It's Georgia by 2.5 on the road with an over-under of 49.5. Tickets as low as $254.
Yeah, and let's be honest, just to preview that just for a quick second, Georgia's got some questions to answer. You went to Kentucky and won by a point. You got questions to answer, and Bama is not the team you're going to have to answer them to. Jalen Milroe is playing out of his mind. Kalen DeBoer is a great head coach. And think about it this way. Kalen DeBoer just saw just watched Georgia last year lose to this basically same Bama team under Nick Saban in the SEC championship game. He's got to know something. So that's going to be a great one. Don't sleep on Illinois and Penn State.
Yeah, it'll be also interesting to see actually with some of these games where the times haven't been decided that they're probably waiting on the polls to come out to be able to see where they can start slotting them for marketability.
Well, I'm surprised the TBD came up on Ohio State and Michigan State because I was almost positive that game was the Peacock Big Ten game of the week.
Yeah, but you also figured you've got Wisconsin, USC, Illinois, Penn State, Oregon, UCLA, Ohio State, Michigan. Those are four pretty decent Big Ten matchups, but I would honestly think that Illinois and Penn State might actually be the more marketable game because you're going to have Penn State probably jumping at least a spot out of 10, and Illinois with their win could possibly jump themselves into the top 20.
Most likely. It's just really
with everything else. Give me a second. The earbuds died on me.
Well, I'll fill here for a second. So we've got the college football next week. We'll talk a little bit more about the NFL. We'll actually see if Bryce Young actually gets traded. We're going to talk a little bit of baseball. But in 2 weeks, as we mentioned, we also will have our NHL and NBA previews. And just as a reminder, the following week, we're going to be you're going to see me personally watching along the Buffalo Sabres, and then followed a few days later with the St. Louis Blues home openers to watch along videos. And then the then we'll actually have the following week, and then we might be off the week prior to Halloween for something that Michael absolutely hates my guts over.
No, it's because she's funny.
I just scored tickets to Taylor Tomlinson in Cleveland the last week of October.
Yeah. So we'll have next week with the review of the college football, really a preview of the final day of the Major League Baseball season and all that. Then the following week we got our NBA and NHL preview, and the week after that's our watch along with Ohio State, Oregon out in Eugene, the Saturday night game of the week on Peacock. So I'll be able to actually have it on too. But we will see you guys in 1 week. Have a great rest of your weekend, James. I'm sure I'll talk to you at some point tomorrow, especially with the Jim Donovan stuff going on.
Yeah, it's if they I'll probably keep you abreast or something if they actually if they live stream it on YouTube or they do something with the audio and everything. But I'll I'm gonna. I mean, since it's before midnight, I'll probably do some of the cleaning tonight. This way, I can just hit the gym and just be completely settled in for the game tomorrow.
I'm going to bed.
Yeah, the second one of these was not the best idea at halftime, so I'm wired for a little bit. Plus, also as muggy as it is, there ain't no way I'm getting to sleep at least until 1.
You have fun with that.
Everybody else, have yourselves a great night, and we will actually see you guys 1 week from tonight as usual.
Take care, everybody.
Good night.